Shalom. Hello, everyone. This is video 2 of my testimony. Things that had happened in my life. This is my mother. I'm going to talk about her today. Shout out to my brother Steve in Battle Creek, Michigan. I love you, man. But this is about my mom. She had developed a sickness called Lou Gehrig's disease. This has been just right after I got out of the hospital and things started getting situated. We have our house, and I got hurt in '97. My mom, she came down to see me and stayed with me for a little while I was in the hospital. She would stay there a few nights and stayed home with my wife, and she was in the room helping me when I had to learn to talk again, because I left that out of my first testimony, that when I was able to start getting back to being coherent, I had to learn to talk again. They come in with a dry erase board and put it in my room, and they'd draw 1, 2, 3, and all the way up to 20, and ABCs, all my alphabets, and I had to learn to talk again. And I knew what you were saying to me, and I knew who people were, but I couldn't tell you who you were. It just was garbage when it came out of my mouth. But over a period of time, a few months, I learned to my I still can't even talk, can I? My vocabulary came back to me where I can start speaking normally again. And I still have issues with talking, but let's just joke about it. But my mom, when she was down, she'd stay with me, and got to a point, and this is back in, like I said, '97, and she went home. A couple years later, I think it was around, say, 2000. It's about when I was going to college at Liberty University, I think it was. Oh, Deb, I don't remember. I don't even remember the date I went to college. Let's put it that way. But my mom, I was talking to her on the phone, and she sounded like a person who had a stroke and could barely mention, talk. And so I asked her if she had a stroke, and she said no. And so time went along, and I talked to her a couple more times on the phone. And so I just said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to send you some money. I want you to go to the doctor and get checked out." And so she went and done that, and said that the doctor had told her she had Lou Gehrig's disease. And whenever you find this out, it's usually about, you've had it for 20 years, and you're at the downhill swing of Lou Gehrig's. So some time went by, and I just made a surprise visit. I went and seen my mom. I think I took my daughter with me, and we went up there and seen her and stayed with her for about a week or so. And up in Petoskey, Michigan, I think that's where she was staying at the time, or Gaylord, probably Petoskey. But stayed with her for a little bit and got to visit my mom, and then we came back home. So a couple more months went by, I think it was at this time. My mom had gotten sick, and she went to stay with her brother Earl, and went to see him up there. And Earl was in Holly, Michigan, Earl Austin, and my Aunt Sandy, which is a lovely woman. She took care of my mom, both did, and an angel. I appreciate my Aunt Sandy, and thank you. But my mom was staying at their house, and she got to the point where she needed to go to the doctor to get a feeding tube put in her and stuff. And so me and my brother at this time, Sam, went to go see Mom. And she had this feeding tube put in her and things like that. And so she was doing okay. And we stayed up there for about, I think it was a week or 2 weeks, something like that, maybe 2 weeks, I think that's what it was. And the week we were coming home that weekend, she'd gotten sick, and they had to put the feeding tube in her, is how it was. And she couldn't swallow anything at this point now. And she couldn't use her hands. Her hands were drawn up like this. It looked like my left hand. Both hands were like that. And so they put the feeding tube in her. She stayed a couple nights, and she was able to come home. And then we came on home. About 2 weeks later, she'd gotten really sick, and we went back up to see her. And because we got the report, hey, yeah, this might be it. So we went to see my mom, me and my brother again, And as we're there, I'm in the room and I'm talking to my mom, just me and her, and we're sitting on the bed and we're talking. And Mom, I witnessed to her about what happened to me, my experience that I had with Yeshua. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to her and telling her everything about Jesus. And I know when you watch my first testimony, there's a couple of things I forgot and left out. And I'm like that, I forget things. But I'm talking to my mom, I'm witnessing to her. I'm looking down at my hands. I got my hands on my legs and stuff, and I look back at my mom. She's just a ball, and she's boo-hooing, crying. So I asked my mom was she ready to receive Christ, and she said, yeah. And so I led her through a prayer. There is no sinner's prayer. They tell you that in the Bible, but it says confess your sins to one another, doesn't it? And so what are you confessing? Your sins, so you're doing a sinner's prayer. How about that, y'all? So I'm talking to my mom, lead her to the Lord. She receives Christ right there. After a couple days, we came on back home. My mom passed away. So I had to go back up there to Michigan again and do the funeral service. And I was asked to do my mom's eulogy, and which is wonderful. I enjoyed it. I asked God to, for me not to cry or nothing like that, and so I'd be able to perform this service for her and the family. So when the service was over with, excuse me, when the service was over with, before I come home, my aunt comes up to me. Sandy says, Sean, she said, I want you to come by the house before you leave, and I said, okay. So I didn't know what was it was pertaining to be. So we went back by her house, me and my brother Sam again. So we went by their house and we was talking to them. And Sandy was telling me, I got to tell you this story about your mom. And I said, okay. And so she starts telling me that Sandy works at night. And she comes home, she's at home like about around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And so anyway, this night she says she come home, and Mom was up waiting on her, and Mom was at the point where you had to bathe her, you had to feed her, you had to put clothes on her, and all this stuff. You had to take care of her like she was a baby. And so Sandy says she came inside and was talking to her, and Mom, she was at the point she couldn't talk. She was, like that. And so, but you could understand her if you listened to her. But so Sandy was talking to her, says she fell asleep on the couch, woke up about around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and Mom, when she said she went to sleep, Mom was in a pair of shorts and a tank top shirt, and that's basically how my mom dressed. So anyway, Sandy said she woke up, excuse me, and my mom sitting there with a dress on, had her hair fixed up, had makeup on, had her nails done, and had shoes on. They were buckled. The feeding tube, my Aunt Sandy said she had one of them little tiny baby pins, and it was pinned to her stomach, to her t-shirt, but somehow my mom got it off and pinned it to the dress that she had on. And she said she was dressed like she was going to church. So my mom told Sandy, she said, Sandy says, Ruth, how in the world did you get dressed? And my mom says, Sandy, there's somebody in the house. And so it made my aunt real scared. So she goes through the house looking and can't find nobody. She comes back and says, Ruth, nobody's in the house. And my mom said, yes. Said, there's somebody in the house. Said he had to take a shower. So she goes into the bathroom. She's looking. There's nobody. Comes back. The alarm system's on. And she says, Ruth, said, nobody's in the house, And she says, sure it is, Sandy. He's standing right here beside me. And my aunt started saying, Ruth, don't you do this. Don't you do this. And she says, sure, Sandy, it's my time to go. She said, I love you. And I'll see you later. My mom passed away. Wonderful. God sends angels to us. So we attend angels unaware. And I think that story, that was for my aunt. Sandy, I love you. God bless.